She had nowhere to turn. The night was cold, her baby shivering in her arms, and every door she knocked on seemed to close in her face. A single mother, beaten down by life and cast out from the only home she knew, she walked the empty streets with nothing but fear and hope tangled together. Her heart pounded not just from exhaustion, but from the uncertainty of what tomorrow might bring. She had dreamed of safety, of a fresh start. But reality had a cruel way of showing her how fragile those dreams could be, just when it seemed like the world had turned its back on her completely. He appeared, a man she would have never expected, a millionaire, sharply dressed, with eyes that seemed to see more than just her tattered clothes or her weary expression. He didn't speak at first. He simply watched, a quiet presence that made the cold night feel just a little warmer. And then, in a gesture that would change everything, he removed his jacket and offered it to her baby. For a moment, she couldn't believe what was happening. Was this kindness real, or just another illusion in a life filled with disappointment? Her mind raced, questions colliding with relief and disbelief. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around her baby's tiny hand, as she looked up at him. There was something different about this man, not just his appearance, or the expensive watch glinting under the streetlights, but a warmth in his eyes that didn't judge or pity. In that moment, she realized how long it had been since anyone had looked at her like a human being, instead of a problem or a burden. Her story wasn't easy to tell. A few months ago, life had seemed manageable. She had a small apartment, a modest job, and dreams of giving her child a better life. But one mistake, one moment of trust in the wrong people, had spiraled into chaos. Her partner had turned violent, leaving her bruised and alone, and suddenly, the walls of her home felt like a trap. Friends disappeared, doors shut, and every attempt at help seemed to vanish before it could reach her. She had been running ever since, chasing a hope she could barely name. Meanwhile, the man watching her seemed to sense more than she was willing to share. He didn't ask questions right away, just stood there, letting her catch her breath. Yet something in the way he moved, calm, deliberate, and unhurried, hinted at a life far removed from hers. She wondered who he was, why he was here, and if his sudden appearance was coincidence or fate. As the night deepened, shadows stretched across the pavement, and the wind carried a chill that cut through her thin jacket. She wrapped her baby closer, still holding onto the stranger's coat, feeling a mixture of fear, relief, and an uneasy curiosity about what was about to unfold. She shivered under the borrowed jacket, her thoughts spinning faster than the cold wind around them. Part of her wanted to run, to disappear into the night before the stranger could ask anything, before she had to admit how fragile her world had become. Yet another part of her couldn't move, curious, desperate, clinging to the tiny thread of hope he had offered. As they stood there, the streets around them eerily quiet, fragments of her past kept surfacing. The arguments, the slammed doors, the nights she had cried herself to sleep while her baby stirred beside her. And then there was the job she had lost, one that had barely paid enough for rent, but had felt like stability at the time. Every setback had been a stepping stone to this cold pavement. Yet here, under the dim streetlights, it felt like everything had led her to this exact moment. Meanwhile, the man remained calm, almost unnervingly so. There was a certain intensity in the way he watched her, not pity, not judgment, but an unspoken understanding that made her heart race. She caught glimpses of his life in small ways. The faint scent of expensive cologne, the polished leather shoes, and the quiet confidence in his stance. He was someone who clearly moved through the world with control, someone whose challenges were unimaginable compared to hers. Yet here he was, extending a small bridge of kindness into her storm. Even as she felt the flicker of relief, doubt crept in. Was this an offer of help, or a test she wasn't ready for? Could she trust him? Or was the world about to disappoint her yet again? The night seemed to hold its breath, and the baby stirred, sensing the tension in the air. The question lingered, heavy and unresolved. What would happen next? And how far would this stranger go to change the course of their lives? Her hands trembled as she held her baby tighter, the borrowed jacket providing warmth but little comfort for the storm raging inside her. Every passing car, every flicker of movement in the shadows, made her heart jump. She had learned to expect danger in every corner. Yet the stranger standing beside her felt like the first safe presence she had encountered in months. Still, the questions in her mind gnawed at her. Why him? Why now? He finally spoke, his voice low and steady, breaking the silence without shattering it. He didn't offer solutions or empty words, only an acknowledgement of her struggle, a recognition of the courage it had taken to survive. She wanted to ask him everything, the who, the why, the how, but the words stuck in her throat. Trust was fragile, like glass, and she had been living among shards for far too long. Meanwhile, unseen in the distance, the world she had fled from was closing in. The people who had driven her from her home hadn't forgotten her, and there were whispers on the wind that danger was not yet behind her. Her past felt like it was reaching out, ready to pull her back into the chaos she had fought so hard to escape. As the night deepened, the tension between them grew. Every pause in his conversation, every careful glance, felt deliberate, as if he knew something she didn't. The baby stirred again, a soft cry that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet street. Her pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and anticipation surging through her. In that moment, it became clear that the next decision, hers, his, or fate's, would change everything. The air hung heavy, thick with uncertainty, and the night seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the choice that would lead them to the edge of something unimaginable. Just as a fragile sense of hope began to settle over her, a sharp noise cut through the night, a door slamming. A shout in the distance, on her pulse jumped. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but the stranger's hand on her shoulder held her in place. His eyes narrowed, scanning the shadows as if he had been expecting this. She realized, with a chill that had nothing to do with the cold, that danger wasn't just lingering, it was hunting her. Before she could react, headlights swept across the street, revealing a sleek black car pulling up too close for comfort. Figures stepped out, voices low but urgent. Her stomach tightened. These were not ordinary strangers. They carried an intensity that mirrored the fear she had felt for months. It was clear her past had caught up with her faster than she could have imagined, and somehow, her mysterious protector knew more about them than he was letting on. Her mind raced. Why was he here? Was he simply a passerby with a kind heart, or was he part of a larger, more complicated story she couldn't yet see? And why did he seem calm when every instinct in her screamed danger? Something about his quiet confidence now seemed less comforting and more mysterious, hinting at a life full of secrets she had no access to, secrets that might decide whether she and her baby were safe or in even greater peril. As the figures approached, the stranger tightened his grip on the jacket, shielding her and the baby, and whispered something she couldn't fully understand. The night had grown colder, darker, and the tension unbearable. One wrong move, one word spoken too soon, and everything could collapse in an instant. The figures froze as the stranger stepped forward, his presence commanding and unshakable. His voice cut through the tension, calm but firm, and for the first time, she realized just how powerful he was, not in money or status alone, but in influence and resolve. Words were exchanged she couldn't fully hear, but the tone was enough: authority, warning, and a promise that any threat to her or her baby would not be tolerated. Her heart pounded as the shadows slowly receded. The strangers hesitated, then backed down, their intentions clear but defeated by a force far greater than she had imagined. Relief surged through her like a wave, and she sank to the curb with her baby still wrapped tightly in the jacket. For the first time in months, she felt the possibility of safety, of a future that didn't revolve around running and fear. The stranger knelt beside her, his eyes meeting hers. "You don't have to face this world alone anymore," he said softly, a promise heavier than any words could carry. It was a moment of clarity, of trust forged in the heat of danger. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the words stuck, overwhelmed by the storm of emotions. Just as she began to let herself breathe, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Hesitant, she picked it up, and her blood ran cold. The screen displayed a message she never expected, a single line that made her stomach twist. "You can't hide. We're not done." Even with the stranger by her side, she realized her fight wasn't over. But now, for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. The night still held uncertainty, but there was a new strength she had never felt before, and a promise that the next chapter, whatever it held, would be different. The first rays of dawn broke over the city, softening the harsh shadows of the night and bringing a sense of quiet she hadn't felt in months. She sat on the curb, her baby asleep in her arms, wrapped securely in the stranger's jacket. The danger that had stalked her felt farther away now, though.